we're going to find that just because we're Christian people doesn't mean we do everything right. And just because we're Christian people doesn't mean we can relax. Yeah. I've heard parents say before, well, my child was baptized yesterday, and we all rejoice and celebrate about that, but they go, so glad that finally happened. We can relax now. And I'm thinking, you need to tell any child when they're baptized that Satan is going to launch an attack on them. I mean, like they can't even imagine what that experience could be like, And because we are Christian people, Satan is not going to relax, nor can we. So when we look at the advice and the warning that James is giving us, remember he's talking to people who have embraced Jesus. He's talking to people just like you and me. And so he's saying you can't relax, because we have to more than ever be aware of Satan's attack and the dangers there. So today's going to be a day of self-evaluation. We're not going to be asking you to look to your left or right, in front, behind, and judge that person, nor are we going to ask you to be judged by other people. It's a time for us to look at this warning and this advice, and time to evaluate ourselves. Now, when we talk about works, there are a couple of things I want to warn us about. As we talk about works, this is not about joining a Mayfair ministry team to make sure that you're doing enough Christian work. And nothing wrong with joining a Mayfair ministry team. In fact, I would encourage that. That's just one way. But this isn't about just doing more stuff. But what we're going to talk about today is the way we live. We're going to talk about who we are. We're going to be talking about embracing a faith with spiritual integrity. It's like our DNA. It's not who we are. Christianity and living the Christian life is not something we do. It's who we are. It becomes our worldview. It means no matter what you look at, no matter what your circumstance, you view everything through the lenses of your faith in Jesus. It's kind of like the bracelets that were popular for a while, WWJD. Didn't stand for what would Joe do. It was what would Jesus do, because in everything that we did, we were to stop and ask ourselves, okay, what would Jesus do? If I had the mind of Christ with the Spirit living inside of me, how do I handle each and every situation? It means that everything that we do is filtered through what we believe. So that's what James is going to talk about today. So it's about who we are. It's not about what we do. It's not about sow wild oats all through the week and then pray for crop failure on Sunday. It means that we live a consistent faith that's 24/7. It's just all the time. All right, let's look at the passages now. This is James' second chapter, beginning with the verse 14. James says, "What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, be warmed and filled,' without giving them the things that they need for the body, what good is it? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is," what's the word there? Now, we all understand the concept of dead, right? Do you see severity in this? Well, he goes on. He says, "But someone will say, 'You have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that God is one. You do well. Even the devils believe and shudder. Do you want to be shown, you foolish person, that faith apart from works is," what's the word there? "Useless." These are pretty big words, aren't they? Even translated into our English language, these are pretty big words. So here's our objectives today. All right, I'm going to go ahead and tell you where we're going to end up, because this is really what I want us to do. I want us to understand that James is not talking about salvation by works alone. And he's trying to distinguish between what a living and vital faith looks like and what a dead faith might look like. He's going to challenge us. He's going to challenge us to examine whether our professed faith is living, transformative. It means that it changes the very core of who we are, that we're different, we're unique. It means that we don't have to tell somebody that we're a believer in Jesus. They pick it up because they see who we are. They hear our language. They see our actions. They see how we treat other people. But James is going to ask us, and James is going to examine whether our professed faith is transformative or is it dead? Merely intellectual agreement without any life to it at all. We know the rules, don't we? And what James is going to ask us to do, what he's going to challenge us to do, is to look at our faith and then look at our works. So our exploration journey today is going to help us to distinguish between a dead faith, which is producing something, which is active, and a dead faith. And so what we're going to be asked to do, what I'm asking you to do, is this self-examination. As we look at this, to ask ourselves honestly, does our life really reflect what we have in Jesus? Now, here's a warning. Anytime that, and I'm aware of this as I was writing notes for this and thinking of what I might say, I'm thinking, this is really one of those lessons that can produce a lot of guilt. Anybody in here feel like you're doing enough? We all kind of have this feeling that we should be doing more. And we worry about these sins of omission sometimes. What am I not doing that I should be doing? Do I really do enough to support the body of Christ? Am I involved in enough ministry? Do I give enough money? Am I really being the best I can be at work or at home? Probably all of us very modestly would say, no, I really fall short. So we can leave a class like this really feeling pretty guilty, and I don't want that to happen because this is a rule. Busyness does not equal success. And some of the busiest people with their faith, doing things because they want to kind of work their way to heaven, to build that resume, kind of have this picture in our mind that Peter's going to be sitting next to the big golden gate or the big pearly gate at the edge of that golden street. And you're going to want to come in and be a part of heaven. And Peter's going to stop you. He's going to say, let me see your resume. Well, here it is. Let's see what all you did. And so we want to make sure we've got enough on that list that Peter will look at and go, okay, it looks like you've done enough and you've done all the right stuff, so come on in. And so the longer our resume, the better it is, right? But James is going to kind of challenge that. James is going to challenge us in these verses by saying that when you show up at that pearly gate, what's going to happen? Peter may or may not be there. We don't know how all this works. But when you want entrance into heaven, it's not going to be because of what you did. It's going to be because of what Jesus did. And you, with all of your flaws and all of your shortcomings and all the things that keep you from saying I'm doing enough, all those things that may haunt you a little bit, but Jesus is going to come up to you and he's going to go, it's okay, come on. I paid the price. Come in. And I just think that's a cool picture. And James is kind of challenging us in that to look at our faith and understand that works come out of our faith, not works and just a faith over here that becomes just more of an intellectual assent. If you really want to study faith, you might flip over to, we're not going to do this because we don't have enough time in this class, but if you want a good deep dive into faith, you're probably going to want to go and look at Paul. You can go to the book of Ephesians. Go to Ephesians, the second chapter. And what Paul's going to discuss is what a living faith really looks like. And then James comes over here in his book, and he talks about what works look like. And those two are not contradictory teachings. It's both of them put together with a little different emphasis. So we're going to look at the works side of it today. So while Paul discusses and emphasizes salvation by faith, James is going to challenge us with faith produces the works. It has evidence about it. So salvation, got to understand this, salvation is a free gift of God. When we walk into heaven, it's not going to be because of who we are, or it's going to be because of who we are in Jesus, but not because of what we did. All right, let me ask you this. All right, if you're looking at these two phrases, one is working for salvation, the other working from salvation, we've got two prepositions here. The subject of each one of those prepositions is what? English teachers? Salvation. Okay? But they're very different, aren't they, by changing that one preposition. So how do you differentiate between working for salvation and working from salvation? This is the part where y'all can talk. Okay, what motivates you? Okay, so what would motivate somebody to work? And you're saying working from salvation is the motivation? Okay, all right, good way of saying it. Could y'all hear that? Yeah, okay. Give her a mic. You need to say that again. I couldn't repeat the way you said it. Can you No.
I said working for salvation, your motivation is, I've got to do this. I have to do this. Whereas you're working from salvation, it's from the heart because it's pouring out from you.
Okay, that's great, isn't it? Who else? What's the difference? How do you differentiate between these two, Jan?
One, when you work for something, you're working to get something. When you
Okay.
work from salvation, you're working to give something because of your gratitude and your
Okay,
faith.
well, that's great. Okay, somebody else? Yeah, got a couple. Go right behind you there.
I don't mean to sound like I'm picking on Jan, but I was thinking about when you said working from salvation, I was thinking it's because I already have salvation.
Okay,
That's why I was kind of rephrasing what Jan said. I think what Jan said is spot on.
yeah,
But I already have salvation as versus I'm going to get it because I've already
Okay.
been saved.
wow, that's,
And I don't need to work for it anymore. I work from it.
okay, great way of saying that. Let's see, I think Amber had,
I was just going to add one word to what they said, which I think the from is, there's a joy in that one. There's
Okay.
no joy in a to-do list. There's a lot of joy in a reaction. to
right,
a
yeah.
gift.
Yeah, that for salvation, that can sometimes be a little frustrating, isn't it? Because we never can do quite enough, can we? And it may not even be sometimes for God's approval, but sometimes we can work for salvation because we get the stars in Bible school class for memorizing the verses, or get recognized for something we've done, or build the obituary at the funeral, those things. Right? Yeah.
As I was looking at those two different phrases, I realized that it doesn't actually say who is working. And so
Okay.
I think the difference between for and from is actually who is doing the working. When you're working for your salvation, that is the individual, the person, I am working for salvation. But when you're working from salvation, that is actually Christ working in you from your salvation.
Wow, great observation. Where were y'all when I was building these notes? I'm ready to leave now, all right? But anybody else?
To go off of what he just said, when you're working for, you're doing the striving and the work and hoping for something.
Right.
And working from your thanksgiving. Someone's done that work, and it's just gratefulness.
Wow, okay, very good. All right, a lot of difference in these two statements. I'm not going to ask you to comment on this part, but which of these are we more prone to follow? You know, if we're doing this as a personal examination now, you know, have I tried to do enough that I would earn God's favor? Or are we willing to let faith transform our life, and then it just happens that good things happen and that God uses us in very special and creative ways? And again, like I say, this goes beyond just being part of a ministry team. We go in and we put in our hours in ministry, which is great to do. But when we're working from our salvation, that transforms even the way that we become employees, even the way that we become friends, even the way that we behave within our community. Yeah. Let's see.
I think we all at times have had the attitude, well, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this for the Lord. And I always think about 1 Corinthians 13 where it says, if you don't have love, it profits you nothing. But I really like the idea too, well, it does profit the other person.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't do it for the right reason. Maybe that's off what you're talking about, but because I think at times, just because of life, we think, oh, I've got to make that visit, or, oh, I should, got to and should have, scary things.
Yeah, and I think that's a great observation, because anytime we do something, regardless of our motivation, other people could benefit. And God can use some pretty evil people to do some pretty great things at times. So we're talking actually about our faith now, but it might be a good lesson sometime to look at how other people can benefit from even our own shortcomings. So good works don't ever go wasted. Well, if you go back into the first part of this section, James gets really vividly practical in this part. He says, if a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking a daily food, and one of you says, go in peace, be warmed and filled, without giving them the things needed for the body, he says, what good is it? This is pretty practical in it. This is where we see a brother or sister in need, but yet we do the right verbiage with them, but it really doesn't follow through in action. Now, in 1991, we rented a van for a church retreat, rented it from the Ford dealership there in Smyrna, Georgia. And when I went to return the van, I was in the showroom floor, and they had a brand new Ford Explorer. First time that vehicle had ever been offered, sitting right there on the showroom floor. And it was all shiny. It looked so cool. I walked out with that car that day. I didn't care what the payments were. I didn't care. It's like, I got to have that. I was so proud of the thing. It was this glossy, shiny, black Ford Explorer. Within a couple of weeks, we were all headed to the beach. The boys and I were going to go to this Fort Walton. Beth and I camped a lot, and so we were camping with the boys there at Fort Walton, Mary Esther, and we were going fishing at the Fort Walton Beach pier. So we had all the fishing gear loaded up, and as we pulled into the parking lot, there was this couple there, man and wife. They were kind of dirty. They had their dirty buckets with them, about half full of water, and they came walking up to this Ford Explorer and said, we need food, and so we'll wash your truck for food. And I told him, don't touch this truck. I mean, to see those little dirty sponges on that brand new vehicle, and I was so proud. There was not one speck of dirt on that car anyplace. We didn't eat in that car. No, you're not going to wash this car. And so I parked out away from everybody, and we unloaded our fishing gear and walking in. And both the boys, I guess they'd kind of been talking, but both the boys kind of almost in unison said, Dad, they didn't want to wash the car. They wanted something to eat. Sometimes we get so lost in our own lives that we can ignore the real needs of other people. Our faith is demonstrated by what we do sometimes to actually help somebody. And probably every single day we have opportunities to help somebody, to do something. But yet if we just say, well, I'm busy. I'm on my way to church right now. Remember the Samaritan that helped the man land by the road? Passed up by a couple of two other individuals because they were too busy in their church stuff to stop and actually exercise the very things that they were teaching. And so Paul is pretty practical. And if you notice, twice in this time, he asked the question, what good is it? What good is it? He's asking a really valuable question I think we need to ask. I mean, we learn some valuable things when we're here every single week. We learn valuable things when we do our own Bible study. But James says, what good is it if it doesn't really make a difference in your life? You see, practiced or practical religion, if it's not really practiced, if it's not really lived out, just becomes useless. We can be guilty of this. Somebody in the church, they have a real need. John Porter broke a leg, let's just say. You haven't broken a leg, have you? No. John Porter breaks his leg. All right, so Jan says, keep John in your prayers. He's having a lot of problems with his leg. So I go up to John after. John, sorry to hear your leg is broken. We'll be praying for you, brother. And walk on off. Don't offer to help him. Don't get his snacks. Don't get his coffee. Maybe don't even really pray. Back when I was going through some stuff with my cancer treatments and all the stuff caring for moms at home and the things that Beth and I were dealing with, there was one individual in this church. There were others, but there was one primarily individual that he'd catch me in the foyer. How you doing? I'm doing fine. He'd look right at me and say, no, really, I want to know how you're doing. And more than one time in the foyer of this church with everybody sitting around, almost forehead to forehead, and he would pray for me. And I still remember that because it really made it wasn't, and I know that when we say we're going to pray for you, we probably do add people to our prayer list, and that is an extremely valuable thing to do and to offer to do. And if somebody says that they're praying for you, and they do, I mean, that's just incredible. Let's be careful, though, that we don't come up with that we don't take these cliches unless we're really going to back them up with our actions. So if I say to John, I'm going to pray for you, I need to be praying for John, whether it's in his presence or aside. I need to be praying for them. Beth?
Tell them the rest of the story.
Oh, we don't have time for the rest of the story.
Well, briefly, what happened?
I'll have to tell the rest of the story later because we're running out of time. So trying to push through this. But yeah, there is the rest of the story on the Ford watching thing that it gets kind of emotional. But anyway, what I'm saying is works are the fruits of our faith. Jesus said, by their fruit they'll be known. Our faith produces fruits. The fruits are the work. So that's where we go back, that we do works because of our faith. We don't do works. We don't do stuff in order to work our way to heaven. All right, now we come across, it's interesting that John, anytime we say something, there's going to be somebody that's going to say, I disagree. Well, James is no different than that in the church that he's working with. He said, now some of you, he knows there's going to be some disagreement. All right, somebody's going to come up to me later, and they're going to say, you have faith and I have works. But what James says is the answer to this debate is, show me your faith apart from your works, and I'll show you my faith by my works. An incredible statement. And this is where James challenges us. So this is the part where we start to feel better about things, because we don't have to clutter our life with busyness to impress God or to impress anybody else. We just let the things that we do come out of our faith. And I think that you'll find that there's probably, maybe you may not be quite as busy, but what you do may have a lot more depth to it because it's rooted in your faith, not in your fear. It's not like you're trying to keep yourself out of hell by doing more. It's just that God welcomes you into his grace because of the faith that you have in him. So anyway, so he said, so we could talk about this. We had a little bit more time, but just think for yourself, what are some of the types of works or actions that really could come out of your faith in Christ? Think about your everyday relationships that you have. Think about who you are as an employee or an employer. Think about the way that you handle your money. Think about the time that you apportion your time. Think about the way that you show grace and acceptance to other people. All of those are works that just flow out of who you are. And they're things that don't severely alter your schedule. It's just that your schedule is seen through the lenses of your faith. So anyway, now we get to the scary verse, and this is where we're going to end up. James says, you believe that God is one, you do well. Even the devils believe and shudder. Even the demons believe and shudder. Do you realize that Satan and all of his demons could win every single Bible memory challenge above you? They could get every trophy, every certificate. They get perfect attendance for church. They attend every worship assembly. They attend every life group. That they know the Bible front and backwards. The demons could actually recreate the Bible if it were. So, if you memorize the Bible, if you're faithful in every single service, well, you do well. Even the devils can do that. So what separates us from the devils? What separates us from the demons? This is the part where you answer. Okay, Jesus Christ. It's our faith in Jesus. Somebody said something over here? Okay, yeah. It's Jesus is what makes the difference. It's because we have given God, our Creator, the one whose image we bear. We've given our lives to God. And that makes all the difference in the world. We're motivated not by who we are, but we're motivated by who Jesus believes. So I think what this challenges us is in our faith, there's this intellectual level. I know all the answers to all the questions. And I'm not making fun of this, but just the fact, when somebody says, we're going to baptize this person, we've sat, we've studied, and they've answered all the questions correctly. So therefore we're going to baptize them. I do think that's great. So I'm not saying, but answering all the questions, the demons could answer those too. The thing that makes the difference is when we understand who Jesus Christ is. And we understand our faith, our life that we're giving to him, and we start living by his grace and not by our own works. So we end with this, and then time for our pastoral time. What's one thing? Think about this in your self-examination. What's one step that you can take this week to live out your faith more actively? Think about every little chapter in your life, every experience you have. How can you let Jesus show through in that? All right, yeah.
This is something I've been thinking about lately is I may have a blind spot, and maybe more of us do. How do I know if I'm just doing empty words and not showing up? I had a friend tell me in the 90s I had drifted away from God. He said, if you don't really show up as a Christian, I was able to apply that to my life and make a difference. So maybe it's just a step I could take is to figure out how I can self-reflect and figure out, am I really acting like a Christian. So.
Yeah, and that's it. I think we have to learn to put on the lenses of Jesus and start viewing things through Jesus rather than viewing it through ourselves. But I think where the greatest encouragement of this is, we can relax. Because, again, you cannot work your way into heaven. You know, I had somebody say one time, that faith is kind of like walking on banana peels. You're good right now, but in a minute you're going to sin and you're going to fall. So heaven one minute, hell the next minute, and you just live your life just trying to stay on your feet. I think, what a horrible way to live. If you're using that for a conversion story, for me, it's not going to work. But to know that I can stand on solid ground, that if something were to happen to me right now, that I kind of get escorted from this life into a life in the presence of the glory of God because of who Jesus is. That I do what I do in my faith. I try to live my faith out the best that I possibly can. And then Jesus takes the rest of it. Of course, Paul says, shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. It isn't license to sin more. It's just license to relax and rest in Jesus now. I think so. David, you had a comment? And we're going to end with David because, Karen, if you want to. Joe?
One of the things the society is really looking for today is for Christians who are authentic, who are the real deal, who practice their faith, who pray and study their Bibles. And it's a natural evangelism. If you honestly believe, be authentic.
I think you're exactly right. I think the number one thing that is sitting on the table for everybody in America, maybe in the world right now, is the word integrity. I think that is the one thing that we are really lacking. And so if we can step forward and be people of faithful integrity as Christians, I think it's what the world's looking for. All right.